Let's have a talk, let's have a chat, talking about a little this and that. Hello and welcome to This and That. I am your host, Mary Easterling, and today I am not doing any series. Call this a little personal, perhaps, or call this The Problem Presented. In reading something where God was speaking to someone else, the topic of self came up. The topic of abortion came up. And out of that comes this, the problem presented. But before I begin, to listen to anything else from This and That, go to talkingaboutthисandthat.wordpress.com, click on the podcast link, and enjoy. Roe versus Wade, and women rejoiced when the Fed said you shall not prevent a woman from exercising the right to terminate the life in the womb. Then came Trump, the card played by the living God, and the Fed struck down the edict of permitting the termination of pregnancy. Now the arguments fly. I ought to know. Mine are before him being the living God. It turns out he doesn't like the reasons women are giving for their terminations. So, am I pro-life? Yes. Am I pro-choice? Well, I tried to run that rationale of the need of medical access when, quote-unquote, stuff happens. So then he argued his point in one word: self. In the last days, men will be lovers of self, 2 Timothy 3:2. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy. Well, there's a list. Self-loving means I do what I must to save my life over that of my unborn within me. So, the argument of sickness, like being pregnant and finding a tumor, that if you don't get it treated, you will die. But you might live long enough to give birth, but you will die. So, you abort. God will understand, right? Wrong. But your husband comes along and helps you to decide to get life-saving treatment that will cost the baby its life. Why? Love. No. Self. His self. The husband's self. See, you are his idol. The husband's idol, not God's. The husband's idol. You're his idol, his squeeze, his life, and reason to live. Oh, goddess, you. Well, perhaps the man isn't saved, and not likely ever to be so either. He won't want that thing in you because it will remind him of you, and that is too much to bear. But he won't go to God, so self. Rationalize it psychiatrically all you want, but it isn't mental. It's spiritual. Don't mistake my tone on broadcast. This is not easy. I'm not enjoying this broadcast. This is known as vulnerability on broadcast. Being young and getting pregnant. What was that about not experimenting and getting into trouble or fleeing youthful lust? What about adoption? Oh, that's bad. But the life is saved. In other words, the adoption system's horrible. And I agree, it really is. But the person lives. The baby lives. But you don't want to go through with it. Be stigmatized by it. Bear the responsibility for your indiscretion. Again, self. You will pay a price, losing freedom because you got to care for your kid, losing promotion because you got pregnant, got caught, got knocked up, got pregnant. Now you have to care for your kid. Losing opportunities like the promotion or ever having a job or not being on welfare, or fill in the blank. There's always an opportunity lost when you are sacrificing your life to care for another. Lots of opportunities. I ought to know. I'm a caregiver for a parent, not a child. Had to raise them. They'll hear this. It'll be fun. Especially since one of them will be hotly irate with me for all of this. Oh well. Self. So you're going to lose out to raise the product of your indiscretion and need for gratification unlawfully before God. Sex out of wedlock. And if it feels good, should you do it? Self serves its wants and needs first, but will not shoulder the responsibility to bear and to care for the consequences or deal with the consequences. Rape. This is your number one argument. Rape. There's another one, but this is the first one. A violation produces a fruit one cannot bear. No, it's one you cannot bear. Because as long as you can carry the pregnancy to term, you can technically bear the fruit. But you don't want to. So you destroy it. Again, self. Can you not overcome the reminder of the violation and consider the gift of God? You could also give up the life to another to care for and raise, like adoption. Or you could die to self and raise it anyway, yourself. No, you weren't in discretion. Or were you in the wrong place at the wrong time? Did they slip a Mickey in your drink? Should you have been there? When we sin, we do get into trouble. And there are usually consequences that will hurt self. Next argument. The woman whose husband leaves her with child and no way to raise it. So she gets rid of it. Or the woman who leaves her with child and she's already got a bunch, and this is another mouth, and how is she going to explain to the living kids that she's about to put one more kid out that she has to feed, and now they're all going to starve and die? There are no easy answers to some of these questions, by the way. But the choice to terminate the pregnancy and not seek God for a solution, any solution he might offer, once again, self. Is it the woman's fault that the man decided to go and find greener grass? Quite possibly not. But the embarrassment of the divorce was bad enough, and the destruction of her dignity was worse, but she now compounds her problems by terminating that which is not expedient to her. She could give it up because she can't afford either the new mouth to feed or any mouth to feed. But she could at least give it birth. But to do that, self will take the hit. Her reputation will become mud. Oh, that poor woman, he left her. She must have been a really rotten cook, or fugly, or bad in bed. See, all of us selves are as nasty to self as being selfish can get. But what was that little thing about 2 Timothy 3:2? Men will be lovers of themselves. Folk will love themselves above all else, in other words. All right. The religious. You're in a culture where, you slept with him. You're pregnant. We gonna kill you now. The worst, one of the worst, is the religious that cost the poor woman her life. But then again, she sinned by sleeping out of wedlock. Now both the baby and the mother get to die for lust. The woman who is pregnant, loses her husband, is a widow, in despair terminates and kills that which is in the womb. One might pity her. But did she go to God for comfort? Did she die to self? No. So once again, self. For each argument, and believe you me, I made these arguments to God, and this is what I'm getting back. What I am broadcasting is his arguments kind of back to me, making me think this thing through. So for each argument, I find the answer is self-preservation. I only have one argument left. This is my thought. Sometimes that pregnancy takes a dire turn and the child will die or fail, and in so doing, kill the mother as well. I argue that at least in this case, medical access to terminate ought to be provided, but then again, self. You see, if the pregnancy is terminating of its own accord, self did not kill it, something else intervened. Call it the fall that was unavoidable, or should that situation have ever arisen? Should you not have been more careful, mindful? Who knows? Call it the accident that takes the baby and ruins the mother, and that is sin as well, as in the guy that hit your car, the driver who got distracted, or, I don't know, this is a sinful and fallen world. How many things can you guess could intervene in a pregnancy? Because some other quote-unquote self took advantage of a situation and wreaked terrible consequences on the woman who wanted that child. Yes, sometimes things do go medically, genetically, horrifically wrong. But why are we terminating? It seems as though those cases are a lot less than we want to believe. And in those cases, self might want to go to self's maker and ask, what happened, God? That might be the point of why, because you might get an answer you don't like. Something that self did, and God terminated the pregnancy. Oh. By botching the fetal or embryonic or whatever developmental stage. So it wasn't going to be an okay kid. But here again, and this is kind of coming off hot off the presses here, because my mind suddenly goes tilt and says, but if you do give it birth and it doesn't die, you're going to be saddled with a special needs baby. And self says, can we not? And you terminate. So again, the possibility can come to self all over again. You see, to a God who sacrificed his son for sin, there is no reason to justify preservation of self above another. To a God who experienced through his son the death of that sacrifice vicariously, again, there is no excuse. If we stubbornly boil it down, all these things are self. Even the surprisingly young girl who turns out to be the victim of the other argument, incest. Oh, that thing ought not to be allowed to live anyway. It's too close genetically bred. Okay, that might be an issue. Somebody did take advantage of someone who was young. But here's the thing. Even the surprisingly young girl, the victim of incest, who can still carry to term, maybe, possibly, with a lot of help, and still be able to bear children later on in life, but that would be self taken to an extreme. In this case, the parents will turn the child on the unborn, because the child, their child, the girl, is quote-unquote their idol. Self has that one last nasty up its sleeve, our children. We live through them. We want our will and not God's. I mean, after all, how in all creation could a very young child become pregnant before puberty? All of you out there with medical degrees, the stories have abounded. Somebody who's 5 years of age got pregnant after old Uncle Dickie shoved his into her and raped her. I mean, Dickie ought to pay for this by raising the child as his own and supporting the needs of the little girl he violated for the rest of her life. But still, how can a very young child beneath the age of puberty even conceive and get pregnant? Why not monitor that pregnancy and see if it can, I don't know, develop and maybe terminate on its own? But then this comes to the I have no answer for this. For in the end, the players who defile women wrongfully will meet their end. Everyone does. So I end this broadcast by congratulating myself in rejoining the Bigot Club. I also know that if and when certain persons hear this, well, I lost their respect, possibly even relationship with them. This is where the problem presented becomes mine. God or kids, friends, etc. Tough walk, but it is required of all the saints. Thank you for listening. Until next time.